The rapid shift of business operations has left many organizations today vulnerable, as customers more than ever value online interactions and a secure digital experience. In a post-pandemic economy, data is our lifeblood, and security and availability are now the cornerstones of our business. As a result of this accelerated digital transformation, majority of our organizations today are embarking on a journey to the cloud. A journey that will inevitably bring up new opportunities, but also expose new risks. What do we move to the cloud? Which cloud? More than one, perhaps? Will my data be safe? Will I be able to control it? Will I lose control? These, amongst many more questions and concerns that are asked by customers across the world today. Hi, I'm Tatiana Sanghera, Regional Sales Manager with Radware.
And I'm Fred Patterson, Channel Sales Manager for Radware. Along with Encore Cloud Services, our digital infrastructure partner, Equinix, and the rest of the panel, we thank you for tuning in to our Digital Transformation Summit in Toronto. What better way to kick off 2022 than with insights and perspectives directly from industry leaders and cloud providers themselves. Today's discussion will help separate the fog from the cloud and dive into real-world cloud and digital services consumed and implemented by customers. Together, we'll review changes in corporate culture brought about by cloud and digital ecosystems. We'll discuss adoption and integration challenges, as well as critical considerations necessary to maintain ongoing security and availability of your deployments, environments, digital assets, and data.
At the end of the day, we believe that digital transformation should not compromise your business. On the contrary, it should enable it, ensure it, protect it, and secure it. We are going to draw from the experiences of our esteemed panelists to understand how your digital transformation can be business transforming indeed. Joining us today are representatives from leading organizations helping drive and enable digital transformation. Please, let's meet our panel.
Thank you, Tatiana. Okay, so let's go around the table. Adam, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you believe digital transformation is so important in today's socioeconomic environment?
Great, thank you, Fred. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Kupsta, founder of Encore Cloud Services. Digital transformation is important as for the first time it positions organizations to respond instead of reacting to socioeconomic dynamics in a pragmatic, agile, and elastic way.
Thank you, Adam. Sanj?
Hey guys, my name is Sanjeevan, Srikrishnan. Please call me Sanj. I'm a principal architect with Equinix, and I also lead up our solution architecture function for Canada. So when you talk about digital transformation, I take it from a different angle. It's more or less how are businesses responding to real world needs. That's really what it is, right? We're going from a fixed and siloed environment to an environment where you can respond immediately, like in the case of the pandemic. The number of organizations we've had where 80,000 people needing to work from home, and folks are doing one of these. How the heck do I enable this? Well, we kind of help them do all of that with some of our partners around this table.
So my name's Neil Bunn. I lead a team of engineers and technologists here for Google, helping our clients adopt cloud and secure cloud foundations. And on the topic of digital transformation and just why it's so important, I think it's the continued evolution of technology affecting business. I started my career more than 20 years ago, kind of the advent of the web and web transformation. And now we think about that as pervasive everywhere, particularly in a pandemic. Everything needed to kind of be done in kind of an online form. Digital transformation is kind of that next evolution of going even bigger in that, bigger in data, bigger in connectivity, all of those sorts of things. And I think, especially after the lessons of the last 18 months, we all know it's super critical for survival of business and just the enjoyment of life. So pretty interested in this conversation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Krishna. I'm Krishna Venkataraman. I'm a cloud solution architect with Microsoft. One of the key primitive for the digital transformation is enabling businesses to be more dynamic as well as addressing customer needs. At the end of the day, digital transformation is not about the entire industry, but what is relevant to you, how are you going to build that business, and how are you able to keep up with the continuous change. And also one key mandate is also cultural changes too, because the way we work today is very different than a few years ago because of all the things happening. How are we able to keep your cultural innovation at par with things are changing? And the last key important point is empathy. Because one of the key things about technology transformation also understanding issues and challenges from the end customer point of view, or it could be any end point of view, so that you're able to address the needs and make things for the better.
My name is Gilad Barzilay. I'm the Director of Public Cloud Security at Radware. Digital transformation is everywhere, right? It allows companies to be more competitive in the market, more agile, and to support the business growth they're trying to achieve, which is basically the main goal for every company today. So allowing them have security in the speed of business is what we do at Radware.
Thank you very much for inviting us here. My name is Robert Spivak, and I am the Director of Business Development at ControlGap. We are a IT security and consulting company and help many of the major organizations with their compliance needs. When it comes to the socioeconomic components that we deal with, consumers today expect uptime of 100%. I have to have it, it must be up and running no matter what. And as part of that, it's created an interesting model for the security world, because now the availability, the traditional types of security controls that exist out there no longer work in the cloud. And we've had to evolve the way we do security today. And that's really where our organization has worked to evolve in a pragmatic way with our partners to come up with unique solutions to make sure that not only the consumer, but the organization is getting the type of value that they're looking for.
Thanks so much for that, team. Now let's jump in, shall we? So the challenges we see today in digital transformation include transformation velocity, increased complexity, and dependence on aging infrastructure or systems of record. So question for you, Adam. How does Encore Cloud Services help customers with some of these challenges today?
Thank you, Fred. So at Encore, we help organizations modernize their technical landscapes. We have a three-step approach for those who are coming from infrastructure-focused backgrounds, which are majority of established customers. Step one in any digital undertaking is to securely establish a high-performance ground-to-sky interconnection environment that allows established systems of record and infrastructure to interact with cloud-deployed resources, services, and apps. Step two is to review the existing technical estate of the organization and classify it across three dimensions. Dimension one identifies infrastructure that must remain on-premise for whatever reason. It could be technical debt, it could be legacy systems, specialty systems, existing investments. And if there is something to leave behind, we find about 3 to 5% of that technical estate resides with the customer's premise. Dimension two captures the infrastructure that can be deployed using cloud-native resources. And this is where we facilitate that migration, the architecture around those systems that may be moved into the cloud. Dimension three captures the infrastructure, systems, applications that can be cloud adjacent. And cloud adjacency with us places core systems or infrastructure in close proximity to the hyperscalers and in an environment where they can be considered on net, oftentimes in single-digit network latencies. In such scenarios, there are often opportunities where legacy infrastructure, apps, and systems of record can benefit from augmentation using cloud resources and services. Step three is really a partner ecosystem that can pragmatically deliver the necessary services just in time for any organization to maintain their digital velocity. This includes a blend of managed digital infrastructure and digital-focused professional services that are all backed by a robust and industry-leading partner ecosystem. By leveraging this approach, our customers remove risk and a lot of complexity from their modernization initiatives, resulting in quicker, attainable, and lasting digital outcomes.
Thank you, Adam, very much. Sanj.
Thanks, Fred. At Equinix, we're the world's digital infrastructure company. So we deal with velocity, complexity, and implementation of digital transformation in a very unique way. So everything we talk about, we don't actually do. Think of us as like the plumbing of everything, right? That's what we really do. But we view digital transformation with three key concepts, and this kind of ties into what Adam was saying. Digital edge, the digital core, and digital exchanges, right? And I'll take all three in sequence. We'll start with the digital core. The digital core, these are dense interconnection hubs, as we call it. So think about this is where some of the core infrastructure that Adam talked about that can't go into the cloud. Some of the cloud adjacent infrastructure would sit, right? But side by side with our partners at Google and Microsoft, right? So seamless connectivity from what you need into whichever public cloud you need, right? Now think of that regionally for a second, okay? So in Canada, that would be markets like Toronto and Calgary, right? Globally, whole different ballgame, right? We've got, 235 odd sites around the world. I lose track of how many we have. But those are the digital cores. Then we have the concept of the digital edge. These are, think of them as aggregation nodes that are spread out everywhere. So as a global enterprise, you've got a unique challenge. How do you provide the same level of service to somebody who, for example, is sitting in New York versus somebody who's sitting in Malaysia? How do you do it? Can you provide that infrastructure? And it's really difficult from these one central point, right? Which is where we've got this concept of digital core and digital edge. We call this strategy interconnection-oriented architecture. And the idea is scatter your digital cores near line to your cloud infrastructure. Scatter your digital edges near line to where your internal eyeballs sit and your external eyeballs sit. And with a combination of Equinix's services plus the public clouds, now deliver your applications seamlessly, right? Globally. Now, where this gets even more interesting is when you look at the digital ecosystems. This is really what makes it a game changer. So digital ecosystems allow our customers and partners to interconnect with one another seamlessly. Think of the ability now for you to interconnect from one cloud to another cloud, from Google to Microsoft in under 90 seconds with 5 keystrokes using commercial off-the-shelf tools like Terraform. We do that kind of stuff day in, day out. And what becomes even crazier when you look at our digital ecosystems and how we're integrating with our partners, we've now brought the capability to market to take the public cloud, like with Google and Microsoft, and extend that to the edge, using technologies like Anthos, using technologies like Azure Arc, right? All with a few keystrokes. It's kind of crazy. But back to what I was saying earlier, we do none of it. All of that is done through our partners like Adam, right? Because we're literally the plumbing.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy cool. So that gives a unique vantage point from the plumbing perspective. I mean, Neil, how are you guys seeing it from the cloud perspective?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, Google's been around for 20 plus years, and when we talk about the challenges of complexity and velocity, we feel that, immensely. Started as a basic search engine, with, a few hundred users back in Stanford, and have grown to literally have products, services, both for consumers and enterprises now that cover billions of users across all of our different services. And complexity at that scale is really intense. So exactly what you were kind of talking about just before, the concept of composable infrastructure, the ability to script and to automate the expansion and contraction of resources to meet people where they need those resources, both for our own services and for the services that we offer through our cloud platform, is pretty foundational. And in fact, I think it's very similar to the approaches that Microsoft is using as well around composability. That's really what makes cloud transformational, I think, to everybody. But you touched on something, and I know if I don't touch on it, Robert will in a minute, but you said public cloud. And I love the term public cloud, but in the context of digital transformation, I think it always scares people in one way, and I'm sure Robert's going to touch on really the trick for both Krishna and I, and for all of our partners, is how do you take a public resource and not make it available to the public all the time, right? The safety and security of data, is paramount. How do I, as a service organization, make sure your pictures are only for you? And when I'm providing those services to a business, how do I make sure that that data is strictly yours, not even something that we can access? I think the complexity around creating the governance and security foundations for that is pretty critical, and that's an area that I know we both invest in tremendously. I'd love Krishna's opinion on some of those things as well.
Thanks, Neil, Sanj, and Adam. So the way Microsoft sees this journey is in multiple facets. One is partnership with the customer or partner with the end state is very, very key, because the reason I'm saying partnership is these are multi-year journey. So when you're going through a multi-year journey, there are a lot of challenges. It could be technology challenges, security challenges, landscape, all changes constantly. So if you're not a very strong partner with your customer, it's going to be a hard game. So which means Microsoft is as one of the leading partners, and also customers have own choices too. In today's world operates in a multi-cloud world. When you have multi-cloud world, what is your glue between these different clouds, and how are you able to give a single pane of glass in terms of security, compliance, audit? At the same time, you have to have a business running constantly, right? So you're changing things at faster pace, but at the same time, you have a status quo to maintain. So the way Microsoft looks at it is basically incumbency, a partnership with the customer. And also, it also bringing insights to the customer, right? So one of the things, as technology changes, we need to provide insights to the customer so they're able to change and adapt. For example, moving from a monolith into a microservices world. It's a nice white paper to talk about, but how do you implement the change? What are the DevOps processes? What are the maturity models you're going to bring in? Compliance changes a lot. Like, last few years, today we have new compliance metrics. How are you going to enable those compliances at the same time? Take the customer to the journey. So we see as a partnership, we see a journey. For example, partners like Encore, Equinix and Radware, they all part of the ecosystem. I think we have to address these challenges as a combined team force. But we always partner with the customers, any shape or form, wherever they want to meet. The challenge is, where do you want to meet the customer? At what point they want to meet? Some customers on the early in the journey, some customers in the middle of the journey, some kind of end state. Where are you going to place your bets, and how are you going to help the customer? It's not win or lose. It's how you're going to win as a team is where I see Microsoft is playing a major role on this one.
Thank you, Krishna, for your insights. Robert, if I may, how do you approach it from a consultancy perspective?
Thank you, Tatiana. One of the main challenges that we find with any organization when they're looking at a digital transformation specifically is understanding where your crown jewels are. Where is the secure data? What are the levels of defense in depth that need to be created? The classic definition of a network and a data center no longer exists. We are across nations, we're across data centers. Literally, Google takes a file and splits it up into a million pieces across the world for availability. That could become a major issue when it comes to data residency for organizations that need to be mindful of government requirements to be within a country or within a particular region of the world. Many of the regulatory, legislative, and compliance requirements are evolving on a regular basis, and that does affect the way that you can implement a cloud. It affects legacy systems such as mainframes, backup systems, data that's been sitting around for many, many years and is actually required. One use case we run into quite often in the insurance world is they need to retain data for over 40 years. So how do we handle that when you've evolved multiple versions of the same system, and now you want to put it into the cloud? How does my provider provide the glue and the transparency between systems while keeping that remote access, that remote security, where we know that there's attack vectors and there are threat actors that are just waiting for the opportunity to attack your data? So from our perspective, it's looking at that holistic view to security, the defense in depth, and leveraging the tools that both Google, Microsoft, and the various partners here have created that are very unique in function and in purpose. And because of that, we can then leverage those and attain the compliance journey that our customers are looking for. Gilad, maybe you might have some other thoughts.
Thanks, Robert. So thinking about the public cloud transformation process, what's been working really well for us is the Better Together stories with our allies, companies such as Google and Microsoft, where we're actually delivering a better experience to the end customer by having this Better Together story in place. We're enhancing the visibility and control into the cloud and enhancing security by working closely with our allies to eventually deliver a better experience and a more secure one.
So really, it's all about shared responsibility.
Yeah, that's true, Tatiana. It's all about the shared responsibility model where we partner with our allies to work together on creating this partner ecosystem where we can basically deliver a much better experience, to our customers by building the partner ecosystem and allowing a more security journey to the cloud.
So given all the challenges that we've discussed at this table, what do we see for our organizations and our customers? Where do they begin the journey? Because they're all at different stages, as we've discussed with Krishna before. How do you see this? Robert, in your realm, you talk to customers all the time at different, probably, I'm assuming, stages of their journey to the cloud.
You're absolutely right, Tatiana. We have those customers that are at the inception, have just discovered digital transformation, which is an oddity in this day and age, but they're just learning about it and trying to figure out how to approach that. There's those that are in midstream, have started and kind of went in various ways and now need to understand how to reprioritize and move themselves forward. And then those that are mature in their nature and actually taking digital transformation to that next level. And it's very interesting to see the different dynamics and the expertise that come in from not only our partners, but from internal people who understand three key factors when it comes to this type of journey. To really achieve their mission, they need to be able to understand their critical assets, understand the threat risks around those assets. They also have to understand the business goal. We can be as secure as we want. We can be as dynamic as we need to be. But if you can't achieve the business goal that you have to sell that product, to provide that service, to be the plumbing of the world, if you will, you're not achieving your business goal. So then you've actually not achieved anything in that sense. The last piece is understanding the minutia. So now that we understand what we're achieving, the actual systems we're going to be using, now let's look at the infrastructure, the applications. How do we make sure that they're secure? To Neil's earlier point about public cloud, it's a dangerous word in the security world to say public anything nowadays. Everything must be secure, everything must be put in its place. But ultimately, you're right, it's the balance of public, free internet, free openness, transparency between organizations, but with that caveat of defense in depth and security posture. As those systems do transition to the cloud, that's where partners such as Radware, Google, Microsoft, Equinix have a pivotal role for those particular organizations. Gilad, maybe you can share some of your insights and your knowledge around that.
Thank you, Robert. So the first step must be understanding the new landscape. Understanding we're now facing new types of threats. Mapping out these new threats and vulnerabilities, allowing us to better assess the risk levels we are going to be exposed to as part of the digital transformation journey. For an organization who's going to start their journey, it will be very important to have the right tools in place to face these new threats. The right tools will allow the organization to enhance visibility and control into both environments, the data center and also into the cloud. Once completing assessing the risk and having the right tools and processes in place, the organization will be ready to start a safe cloud journey. So Sanj, what are your thoughts about this?
So that's interesting. So, everything you've said so far, Gilad, and everything Rob said has been sort of, I'm a geek, I'm a tech geek. So I'm going to go to the OSI model. You're at a layer 7 perspective, right? You're coming at it from applications first, which makes perfect sense, right? Our view is a little different. So we view that the foundational driver for digital transformation and for securing the whole public versus cloud conversation is the network. That's where you start, right? And we fundamentally start at a very basic level, which is the pipes that connect all of this, right? So if you look at us globally, our 230 whatever odd data centers or facilities around the world, right? We call them IBXs, International Business Exchanges, are all, the majority of them rather, not all, the majority of them are NIST 800-53 certified right off the bat, ISO 27001. So that gives you that fundamental compliancy requirement sorted out. It means that your information, your cloud adjacent data, your data in transit to the cloud has all been sorted out right at a fundamental level. Now, what we're doing if we go up from that fundamental, layer 1 perspective to a layer 3 level now, from that point onward, it now becomes really, how do you introduce the governance and compliancy models within your cloud presence to support what you've built in the real world, right? And that's a bit more of a tricky conversation. I mean, I've got two experts here, so I'm not going to talk to more of that, but throw it to Krishna. What are your thoughts? Like, how do you help customers create that governance and that compliancy framework within the cloud?
Looking at the cloud journey or the cloud transformation or digital transformation, first and foremost, understanding the strategic initiative that you want as an enterprise to take. And that, because that's very key, because when you have a direction, then you have a path to go forward for it. So from that point of view, what you end up building is you're building, starting to go one level deep. Hey, what are the transformation things I need to do to achieve my end goal? It could be like if you're a retailer, you might want to have better shipping experience. If you're a banking customer, you want to make sure that you have new offerings for the up and coming generation. So if you are a telco, you have
putting the business requirements first.
Business requirements are the key driver. So once you know what your business drivers are, then other things would fall into place. As we're explaining, right? Depending on the industry segment where you are, so you, for example, if you are a media and telecom enterprise, you need to make sure how you're going to service your new generation of customers, at the same time take them towards new offerings. So understanding that end state is key, and then you work backwards and then come up with the technology and how you're enabling it. Within that whole paradigm of things, there are multiple silos within your organization. How are you going to connect those silos in? It could be data, it could be process, it could be technology, connecting it through. So the network is basically a key element for it, which you're going to build that ecosystem through the network. But at the end of the day, what matters is where is your strategic initiative, where are you going to go, and then how are you going to achieve that? Using the combination of technology, people, process, and then that's how the magic happens.
That makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think it's really interesting. And Sanj, I really enjoyed the description of the OSI model. It reminds me of my geek out days. It's just fantastic. And I think Krishna, you touched on exactly the very beginning part. We started this question right with where do people start? I think there's actually two really important questions. One is where do you start? But even more importantly is how do you actually become successful? Because there's a ton of people who have started this journey that whether they admit it or not, publicly, sometimes privately, haven't been successful in their first couple of attempts. And it's because of the complexity of the things you kind of just described, but I also know a tremendous number of organizations that can't do that themselves, don't have either necessarily the technical background or talents to be able to do that on a sustained basis. And I know a ton of organizations that didn't start from the foundations, which are what are my key metrics? What am I really trying to do with digital transformation other than my board says I should digitally transform, or the market tells me to digitally transform? I think if we roll back to what do you do at start and how do you become successful is actually something you touched on, which is about partnership, right? The biggest thing I've learned is I now work with a tremendous number of really brilliant engineers. I think both Krishna and I are very lucky to be surrounded by talented individuals by the nature of the organizations we work with. But the most critical thing I've found with most organizations is they don't ask for help often enough, right? We all learned our lessons on how we built Equinix, how Microsoft pivoted to the cloud, how Google built our cloud from ground up by tripping 1,000,000 times, stubbing our toes, falling over. And if you're a smaller or mid-size or even a large organization, you have to either stub your toe 20 times or ask someone who's been through that pain before to bring that expertise in. And Adam, I'm imagining that's kind of what you guys do all the time, right? Is help people leap over the first 4 or 5 pitfalls of this transformation journey.
Exactly. The biggest challenge we see customers face is actually getting started, because they're essentially looking at the clouds, they're looking at the complexity of the ecosystem, and they're not quite sure what is that right step. They're afraid to make those missteps. So one of the values that we bring as Encore is right from inception, we've been working with what I'll call the compliant verticals, right? So this is financial services, insurance, telco, retail, public sector, among others. And we have collectively sat shoulder to shoulder, and we've witnessed many digital-first design patterns succeed, and some of them fail, publicly or privately. And one of the values that we bring to our customers is, we like to say, make your own mistakes, don't repeat the mistakes of others, right? Because it's really disingenuous to the entire digital process to repeat those same mistakes thinking you're going to come up with a different outcome, right? So when we look at the partnerships around this table, each of us brings our unique strengths, and really this is the power of partnership, right? We all have our respective strengths. At Encore, we combine that into a unified delivery stream for our customers that helps remove a lot of complexity and helps simplify that journey. And we do this through our cloud adjacent, so We do this through cloud adjacency, and with us, we deliver this as both the method, which is our professional services that are that focus on those organizations coming from infrastructure backgrounds and roots. Because a lot of established organizations, unless you're a startup, you have this stuff figured out. But if you're revenue positive and you have customers, you're coming from some sort of infrastructure, some sort of legacy colo environment, some sort of legacy applications, whatever that is, right? And we help those organizations understand their technical landscape, both from an infrastructure, application, data perspective, and how it maps to their digital-first cloud-native services. And the second challenge that we see customers is that word public. Is that bad word public? How do we secure the public resource? And many customers don't realize that the public resources that are available, or the resources that are available within the public cloud, are designed to be consumed privately. And we facilitate this through private interconnection, private data services, private data protection services. And through our partnerships, through Microsoft, Google, Radware, we're now able to overlay some of these industry-leading cybersecurity capabilities that help secure the entire hybrid landscape. Because that's really what the transitional state is for a lot of these scenarios, is a hybrid state. You have a little bit of the old world, and you have a little bit of the new world, and you're moving to the new world. So with that, Gilad, how does Radware help customers secure the entire digital landscape?
Actually, that's a great question, Adam. So we see many organizations these days understanding that they need to cover all bases. They cannot allow themselves to have holes in their security strategy. So in the past, we saw organizations managing their application security and infrastructure security separately by completely different teams. Recently, we've been working closely with many organizations. They took a more agile approach with having a DevSecOps team that covering the entire cloud security stack. That security stack, including the application security, infrastructure security, and also the shift-left approach, where they actually apply the same techniques to secure the CI/CD pipeline and the entire development cycle. In Radware, we can actually cover all bases for our customers in terms of covering under one rooftop the application protection and the infrastructure protection, looking at the entire development cycle and the production environment in the cloud or in the legacy data center.
Well, and really, when you kind of think about that, like the definition of like the infrastructure to the application in a composable environment or in a containerized environment is pretty malleable. Like those things flow back and forth pretty quickly. So the ability to actually seek insight and control all of that must be pretty critical for compliance, I would think, these days.
Absolutely, especially with larger multinational or global companies. They're not operating a single SOC or their joint SOCs across the globe. They have to deal with time shifts, attack vectors. The foreshadowing of an attack coming out from China will impact Canada 9 hours later. So how do you react to that? How do you get ahead of the curve? And I think partners like Radware, Google, and the rest of the panel here are recognizing the fact that we don't live in our neighborhood anymore. We live in a global community that is as small as this cup in some cases, right? And having the right kind of partnership, the right kind of controls in place to not only understand what those threats are, be proactive where possible, but also on the forefront, ensuring that compliance, like you mentioned about 853, FIPS 140, when you're talking about various types of organizations, military applications, those are all different levels of security that need to be addressed. And depending on where you operate as an organization, you have to be mindful of those things. So I think it's really key for the types of things that are evolving in the cloud that are going to really change the way that customers have to think about their world.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we sum it up. It's a sort of a sort of prong catchphrase we use. All the right places, all the right partners, all the right possibilities. And really, it's not trying to be marketing about this, but it's very poignant, because to respond to global threats, to respond to a truly global environment, you need to effectively be in the right places to respond to that. Right? It's like the conversation with anti-DDoS. I don't know if you guys have had this one, where people buy anti-DDoS solutions at the end of the pipe. Yes. Too far down. Way too far down. Needs to be at the other end where it starts, right? That's kind of the analogy. So you need to be where the eyeballs are at the edge.
And really, we all here represent a digital platform. If I can use this analogy, we all represent Home Depot, right? Home Depot, you go there, you buy a bunch of stuff to build a house, but you have to build it yourself. And what we facilitate is we help customers build that room, decorate it for them, clean it for them, operate it for them, so that safe environment is that environment that delivers that security, agility, and velocity for them to respond to changing socioeconomic times and market dynamics.
So customers can focus on their business, not on their infrastructure and security.
Exactly.